Hi guys, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while since I've talked with you, and I sincerely apologize for being MIA. The truth is that I have been through a mini existential crisis. I go through one of these every few years, and it's always something that kind of pushes me over the edge and into this miniature state of depression. I'm trying to decide whether or not I should tell you what triggered it. I'm just going to talk right now and tell you what it is and decide whether or not I'm going to actually include this in the video before I publish it. The specific question that always seems to come back to me that triggers these existential crises is the nature of reality and why we're here, what the purpose of our lives are. Do we fit into this grand plan, master plan, in which our lives serve some higher meaning? Or are we just here as a result of beating the odds? And so I guess I thought I would talk about that with you today. Today I'm going to talk with you guys about consciousness and what my thoughts are about the nature of consciousness. I've thought a lot about this actually, and it's one of the reasons why I became a neurologist. I want to show you my hammock before I talk about the nature of consciousness. So here's my hammock. This is where I go to think, and this is my little piece of heaven. I don't think I'm going to sit in the hammock. There are two major hypotheses, I guess you could call them, about the nature of consciousness. And the first one was developed by Descartes a long time ago, and he hypothesized that the soul, which was the seed of consciousness, was something that was ethereal and not physical, and it was separate from our physical bodies. So this was called dualism. And for a long time, people thought that our souls were separate from our bodies, the physical reality of our bodies. Then science came along and became more advanced, and we began to recognize and understand that the brain is a very complicated structure that allows us to be conscious. And so out of that knowledge came the theory of physicalism. The neurophysiology of our brains allowed us to be conscious, and once we died along with our brains, then our consciousness would cease to exist. And so what is my thought about this? Do I ascribe to the dualistic theory or the physicalist theory? After gaining years of experience about the brain, I tend to lean towards the physicalist viewpoint. And the reason why I say that is because I've seen what happens when parts of people's brains die or become damaged. It throws people into different states of consciousness. Let me give you an example. If someone has a cardiac arrest, it means their heart stops beating, and so their heart can't pump blood to the brain, so their brain doesn't get oxygen, and their brain tissue dies. If the brain goes without oxygen for a certain period of time, it will die entirely, and the person will be brain dead, even if the body is able to be resuscitated. And the reason why this happens is because the brain is, of all the organs in the body, the most susceptible to hypoxia or a lack of oxygen, and so it dies more quickly than the rest of the body. So what usually happens is people will have cardiac arrests, they will get resuscitated, medical providers will get their heart to start pumping again, but by the time they do that, their brain has been without oxygen for so long that the brain has essentially died. So what you have here is a body that's alive, but the brain is dead. So you've lost that person inside that body. Where did that person go? Some might say that their soul has left them and they've gone to another realm. Others might say that when their brain died, so did their consciousness, and they no longer exist as we know them as human beings. There are certain situations, though, where the brain, a lot of the brain dies, but it doesn't die entirely. So sometimes there will be some brainstem activity that's still present, even though the outer parts of the brain, which is called the cerebral cortex, has died. So this person is not brain dead, but they're not exactly conscious, right? The brainstem is the part of the brain that helps to control respiratory function, heart function. If you remove the breathing tube, they might still breathe on their own. This person is no longer the person that they used to be, but they're not all the way dead. So where along the spectrum of consciousness do they lie? That's an interesting question. Let me tell you something even more freaky. There's something called locked-in syndrome. And what happens in patients with locked-in syndrome is that, ladies and gentlemen, when I was editing this video, I realized that I did not explain locked-in syndrome completely. Locked-in syndrome happens when a part of the brainstem is damaged, while the other parts of the brain are completely intact. And what results is a person who looks comatose, but is completely alert and conscious. They just cannot talk, they can't move their bodies, they can't swallow, they can't speak. It takes a neurologist and various tests to uncover whether someone has locked-in syndrome. And there's a very good book called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly that was written by a man, I think he was French, who suffered from locked-in syndrome. And it was, I don't remember, I think he had a stroke that affected his brainstem, but he was completely conscious. And someone discovered that he was fully conscious because he was able to blink his left eye on command. With the help of his wife, he actually wrote this book about his experience. And then he died 5 days after it was published. The brain is a very fascinating thing, and we know a lot about it, but we still have a lot to discover about it. And I also think that we have a lot to discover about the nature of reality. While I am more of a physicalist, just because of the experiences that I've had in the hospital, in medical school, and in residency, I can't say for certain that there is not something else out there. With the knowledge that we're starting to acquire with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, we're beginning to understand that reality isn't necessarily what we perceive it to be. And so our vision of reality is very much skewed by our subjectivity and what we are able to physically perceive, but there's so much more out there that we can't. So I guess I'll leave it at that. This was a really random video. I hope I gain more inspiration to make more videos for you guys. I, again, sincerely apologize for not making videos. I want to be authentic in the videos I make, and I've done a lot of reviews about different supplements, and those have been pretty popular. But the truth is that there's already a lot of information about supplements and diets, and people who want to try a certain supplement or diet are going to try it. And if it works for them, that's great. But you don't need me adding to this huge body of opinions about certain things if you're going to do it anyway. That and supplements, you know this, there's most likely not going to be enough data to support that a supplement works in a human being just because of the lack of funding for clinical trials and supplements. Anyways, I digress. For all of you out there who are going through any sort of existential crisis, you're not alone. I'm totally with you. Peace out.